Thomas Garrett pulled into his driveway at 8:47 p.m. on a Wednesday, the headlights of his Honda Accord cutting through the Austin twilight. The dashboard clock reminded him he was running later than usual, thanks to delayed flights and endless client meetings in Denver. His phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. Late school board meeting. Leftover casserole and fridge. Love you. He sat in the car for a moment, engine ticking as it cooled, watching the familiar outline of their suburban home. 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, a mortgage they'd been steadily paying down for 8 years. The security system panel by the front door glowed a reassuring green. Everything normal, everything in its place. Tom grabbed his laptop bag and overnight case from the passenger seat. At 39, he developed a methodical approach to everything, from analyzing defense contractor data to checking that the front door locked properly behind him. His job required attention to detail that most people would find exhausting, spotting anomalies in massive datasets, identifying patterns that suggested security threats, ensuring the integrity of information that could impact national defense. The house felt different when he stepped inside, though he couldn't pinpoint why. Maybe it was the lingering scent of unfamiliar cologne, or the way the living room furniture seemed slightly repositioned. He'd noticed these subtle changes before after returning from business trips, but Sarah always had reasonable explanations. She'd had the book club over, or Jennifer had stopped by to borrow something, or she'd simply rearranged things while he was gone. Tom disabled the security system with practiced efficiency, noting that it had been armed and disarmed multiple times during his 3-day absence. Normal for Sarah's schedule. She often came home during lunch breaks or stopped by after school to grab materials she'd forgotten. He made a mental note to review the logs later, more from professional habit than suspicion. The mail sat neatly stacked on the kitchen counter, bills sorted from catalogs, his business correspondence separated from household items. Sarah had always been organized, one of the qualities that had attracted him when they'd met 12 years ago at a mutual friend's barbecue. She'd been grading papers at the picnic table while everyone else played volleyball, her red pen moving with surgical precision across student essays. Their relationship had developed with the same methodical approach Tom applied to everything else. Dating for 18 months, living together for 2 years before marriage, establishing joint financial goals and life plans. They'd discussed children extensively and mutually decided against them. Sarah loved teaching but preferred returning home to quiet evenings, and Tom's travel schedule would make consistent parenting difficult. It was a good marriage, Tom reflected as he loosened his tie and headed for the kitchen. Stable, predictable, built on shared values and compatible lifestyles. Sarah understood his work demands, even if she couldn't discuss the classified aspects. He respected her dedication to education and the emotional investment she made in her students. The refrigerator hummed quietly as he approached, and Tom could see the casserole dish through the glass shelf. Chicken and rice, probably, Sarah's go-to meal for busy weeks. He reached for a beer, his hand automatically moving to the top shelf where he kept his preferred craft IPA, mind already shifting to tomorrow's early conference call with the Pentagon liaison. That's when he saw them. Colorful alphabet magnets, the kind elementary teachers used for spelling lessons, arranged across the white surface of the refrigerator door. Tom's hand froze around the beer bottle as his brain processed what his eyes were seeing. MIKE plus SARAH. 2 small heart magnets flanked the arrangement like punctuation marks. Tom stood motionless for nearly a full minute, beer growing cold in his grip, staring at the cheerful letters that spelled out something impossible. The refrigerator's compressor cycled on, breaking the silence, and he found himself cataloging details with the same analytical precision he applied to classified documents. The magnets were arranged in a slight arc, suggesting deliberate placement rather than random positioning. The letters were evenly spaced, indicating time and care in the arrangement. The heart symbols weren't random additions. They were specifically chosen and positioned to frame the names like a declaration. Mike. Sarah knew several Mikes, but only one had been in their house recently. Mike Davidson, the contractor who'd renovated Jennifer's kitchen last month and had been recommended for their planned bathroom renovation. Mike, who'd attended the neighborhood barbecue 3 weeks ago and had spent considerable time talking with Sarah about tile options and fixture placement. Tom's analytical mind began processing possibilities with mechanical efficiency. Innocent explanation. Sarah was helping a student with a spelling project, using the magnets to demonstrate something about letter recognition or word formation. The Mike reference could be coincidental, or perhaps she was helping a student named Mike with homework. Alternative explanation. Someone had deliberately arranged these magnets to send a message, and that someone had access to their house, knowledge of their routines, and reason to believe the message would be understood by its intended recipient. Tom set the beer on the counter without opening it and pulled out his phone. Sarah's text about the school board meeting had arrived at 6:23 p.m., time-stamped while he was still waiting for his connecting flight in Dallas. School board meetings typically ran late, especially during budget season, so her absence wasn't unusual. He photographed the magnet arrangement from multiple angles, then stood back and forced himself to think logically. Sarah had been acting differently lately, more energetic after his business trips, more attentive to her appearance, working out more frequently. She'd started buying new clothes, subtle changes to her style that she attributed to wanting to look professional for parent conferences. There had been late evenings for parent conferences that Tom couldn't verify through the school's online calendar. Unexplained gaps in her schedule that she filled with vague references to faculty meetings or curriculum planning sessions. Changes in her perfume, her hairstyle, her general demeanor that she explained as personal growth and increased confidence. Tom had dismissed these observations as his own paranoia, an occupational hazard of working in security analysis, where pattern recognition was essential and assuming the worst-case scenario often proved correct. Marriage was supposed to be different from work, built on trust rather than verification, faith rather than evidence. But the magnets on the refrigerator were evidence, and Tom's professional training wouldn't allow him to ignore evidence simply because it contradicted his preferred narrative. He opened his laptop and connected to the home network, accessing the security camera system he'd upgraded 6 months ago when his clearance level had been enhanced. The cameras were motion-activated and stored footage locally on an encrypted drive, a requirement for anyone with his level of security clearance who worked from home. The system interface loaded with familiar efficiency, displaying thumbnail images from cameras positioned at strategic points around the house. Tom scrolled back through the timeline to Tuesday afternoon, when he'd been presenting quarterly threat assessments to defense contractors in Denver. 2:47 p.m. Motion detected at front entrance. Tom clicked on the thumbnail and watched a man approach the front door with confident, familiar strides. Mike Davidson, wearing work clothes and carrying what appeared to be a small overnight bag. Mike didn't knock or ring the doorbell. Instead, he bent down near the decorative planter beside the front steps and retrieved something from underneath. A spare key. Tom's stomach clenched as he watched Mike unlock the front door and disable the security system with obvious familiarity. The man knew the alarm code, moved through the house like he belonged there, went directly to the kitchen and started making coffee using Tom's expensive espresso machine. The camera angles didn't cover every room, but they provided enough coverage to track Mike's movements through the main living areas. Tom fast-forwarded through the footage, watching Mike make himself comfortable, using the bathroom, checking his phone, rearranging items on the kitchen counter with casual ownership. 4:23 p.m. Motion detected at front entrance again. Sarah's Honda Civic in the driveway, Sarah herself approaching the front door with her usual end-of-school urgency. But when she entered the house, her demeanor changed completely. Tom watched his wife of 11 years greet Mike Davidson with a passionate kiss in their kitchen, directly beneath the colorful magnets that spelled out their names. They embraced with the familiarity of long-term lovers, Mike's hands moving through Sarah's hair while she pressed against him with obvious desire. The camera captured them talking and laughing, completely oblivious to the message spelled out above their heads. Mike gestured toward the magnets at one point, and Sarah looked up and laughed, but neither seemed to register what the arrangement actually said. They were so comfortable with their affair, so secure in their deception, that they'd become careless and stupid. Tom forced himself to continue watching as Mike and Sarah moved around the kitchen together, preparing dinner using Tom's food, drinking wine from Tom's collection, behaving like a married couple in Tom's house. The footage showed them eating at the kitchen table, Mike's overnight bag visible on the counter, both of them relaxed and happy in a way that Tom hadn't seen Sarah in months. The timestamp on the video showed 7:15 p.m. when Sarah's phone rang. Tom watched her answer with a bright, false voice. "Hi, honey. How was your flight?" She maintained eye contact with Mike while lying to her husband about her evening plans, describing a fictional faculty meeting while Mike smirked and traced patterns on her freehand. Tom closed the laptop and walked to the living room window, looking out at the quiet suburban street where neighbors were settling in for the evening. Normal people living normal lives, unaware that the security analyst at the end of the block had just discovered evidence of a conspiracy that extended far beyond simple adultery. Because that's what this was, a conspiracy. Sarah and Mike had developed systems and procedures that allowed them to operate with impunity during Tom's predictable travel schedule. Mike had a spare key and knew the alarm code, suggesting long-term planning and preparation. Sarah provided alibis and cover stories, coordinating their activities with Tom's absence. The magnet arrangement wasn't just evidence of their affair, it was evidence of their comfort level with deception. They'd become so confident in their ability to fool Tom that they'd started leaving romantic messages for each other in his own kitchen, secure in the knowledge that he would never suspect anything beyond marital routine. Tom's phone buzzed with another text from Sarah. "Meeting running late, don't wait up. Love you lots." He stared at the message, knowing she was probably still in their kitchen with Mike, possibly in their bedroom, definitely not at any school board meeting. The casual cruelty of her deception hit him harder than the betrayal itself. She was lying to him with the same voice she used to comfort upset students or discuss weekend plans. But Tom was a security analyst, trained to handle threats methodically and professionally. Personal emotions could be compartmentalized while he gathered intelligence and developed response strategies. Whatever Sarah and Mike thought they were doing, they had made critical errors in operational security that would prove to be their downfall. Tom opened his laptop again and began downloading the security footage to encrypted external drives, organizing the evidence with the same systematic approach he applied to classified threat assessments. Sarah and Mike had declared war on his marriage and his life, but they'd chosen the wrong target. Tom Garrett analyzed threats to national security for a living. A couple of careless adulterers wouldn't present much of a challenge. The next morning, Tom maintained his normal routine with mechanical precision. Coffee at 6:15 a.m., 30 minutes of cable news while Sarah showered, brief conversation about their respective schedules while she gathered materials for school. She seemed more energetic than usual, humming while she prepared her lunch, kissing him goodbye with what felt like genuine affection. "How was the school board meeting?" Tom asked casually, testing her commitment to the lie. "Oh, you know how those go," Sarah replied, not meeting his eyes. "Budget discussions, policy revisions, the usual bureaucracy. I barely stayed awake." She had no way of knowing that Tom had watched footage of her and Mike sharing dessert at their kitchen table while she was supposedly enduring tedious administrative meetings. Her willingness to elaborate on fictional details suggested experience with deception, a skill set she'd developed over time. "Any major decisions?" Tom pressed, curious about how far she would extend the fabrication. "Nothing that affects my classroom directly. They approved the new technology budget, which is good news for the computer lab renovation." Sarah grabbed her keys and headed for the door. "I'll be home around 4:30. Jennifer and I might grab coffee after work if you don't mind." Jennifer, Sarah's best friend and frequent alibi provider. Tom made a mental note to investigate Jennifer's role in the conspiracy, suspecting she provided coordination and cover for Sarah's activities. "Have fun," Tom said, watching Sarah back out of the driveway with a cheerful wave. She looked happy, relaxed, completely unburdened by guilt or concern about her double life. Either she was a natural sociopath, or she'd rationalized her behavior to the point where deception felt normal. Tom waited 15 minutes, then accessed the security camera interface and began systematic review of the previous 6 months of footage. His government training had taught him that pattern analysis revealed more than individual incidents, and conspiracies typically developed recognizable operational routines over time. The patterns emerged quickly once Tom knew what to look for. Mike's visits occurred exclusively during Tom's business travel, typically arriving between 2 and 3 p.m. and leaving before Sarah's normal bedtime. The timing suggested careful coordination with Tom's schedule, indicating that Sarah was providing Mike with detailed information about her husband's travel plans. Mike's comfort level in the house had increased over time. Early visits showed him waiting outside until Sarah arrived, But recent footage showed him entering independently and making himself at home for hours before Sarah returned from school. He'd essentially moved in during Tom's absences, treating the house like his own residence. The overnight bag was a recent addition, appearing in footage from the past 6 weeks. Mike was now spending nights in Tom's house, sleeping in Tom's bed, using Tom's bathroom facilities, and eating Tom's food. The affair had evolved from clandestine meetings to full domestic partnership, with Tom relegated to unwitting financial provider for their relationship. Tom's professional analysis revealed additional concerning patterns. Mike's visits had increased in frequency and duration, suggesting escalating commitment to the relationship. Sarah's behavior patterns showed classic signs of someone leading a double life: increased attention to appearance, unexplained schedule gaps, emotional distance from her spouse combined with overcompensation through false affection. But most troubling was their apparent sense of security. The magnet arrangement wasn't an isolated incident of carelessness. It was evidence of a mindset that considered discovery impossible. People who felt genuinely threatened would be more careful about covering their tracks. Sarah and Mike had become comfortable enough with their deception to leave romantic messages in Tom's kitchen, suggesting they viewed him as completely clueless and non-threatening. Tom's phone rang, interrupting his analysis. Work calling, probably about the quarterly security briefing he was scheduled to present next week. Garrett. Tom, it's Patricia Wells. I know this might sound strange, but I need to ask you a hypothetical legal question. Tom's pulse quickened. Patricia Wells was a divorce attorney whose reputation for aggressive advocacy made her popular among defense contractors facing marital difficulties. Her sudden call couldn't be coincidental. What kind of hypothetical? Tom asked carefully. If someone discovered their spouse was having an affair and wanted to document everything before taking action, what would be the most effective legal approach in Texas? Asking for a friend, of course. Tom's training had taught him that intelligence gathering often involved indirect approaches and deniable contacts. Patricia's call suggested that someone in their professional network suspected his situation and was offering assistance without explicit acknowledgement. Hypothetically, Tom replied, Texas is a community property state, but fault-based divorce allows for unequal asset distribution in cases involving adultery. The spouse gathering evidence would want comprehensive documentation, financial records, communication logs, witness statements. Timeline and pattern analysis would be crucial for establishing duration and impact. And if this hypothetical situation involved other crimes beyond adultery? Tom's stomach clenched. What kind of other crimes? Insurance fraud, conspiracy to commit murder, financial exploitation of vulnerable individuals. Hypothetically. The conversation was moving beyond coincidence. Someone knew about Sarah and Mike's activities, and those activities extended far beyond simple adultery. Tom's security clearance required immediate self-reporting of potential blackmail or compromise situations, and he was rapidly approaching that threshold. Hypothetically, Tom said slowly, federal crimes require FBI involvement, and anyone with security clearance would need to coordinate with their security officer immediately. The evidence-gathering phase would need to be extremely thorough and legally sound. I'll pass that along to my friend, Patricia said. And Tom? If your friend needs professional assistance with any of these hypothetical situations, my calendar is quite flexible. The call ended, leaving Tom staring at his phone with growing understanding of how serious his situation had become. Patricia's carefully coded language suggested that Sarah and Mike's conspiracy involved federal crimes that could threaten Tom's security clearance and potentially his physical safety. Tom opened his laptop and accessed the encrypted partition where he stored classified work materials. His quarterly security briefing included updated threat assessment protocols for defense contractors, including new warnings about domestic exploitation of clearance holders. The timing felt ominous. He scrolled through the briefing materials until he found the section on domestic threats. Recent cases included cleared personnel whose spouses had been compromised by foreign intelligence services, domestic partners who'd sold classified information for financial gain, and family members who'd participated in sophisticated identity theft schemes targeting government employees. But buried in the appendix was a case study that made Tom's blood run cold. A defense contractor in San Diego, whose wife and her lover had planned his murder to collect life insurance benefits, using information about his classified travel schedule to arrange an accident at an overseas location where investigation would be difficult and insurance claims easier to process. Tom's travel schedule was predictable and often involved locations where accident rates were statistically higher than domestic travel. His insurance coverage had been increased during recent open enrollment periods, changes that Sarah had encouraged by citing their lack of children and her concerns about financial security if something happened to him. He grabbed his phone and called the security office at his contracting company, knowing that self-reporting suspicious activity was required within 24 hours of discovery. Garrett Security Solutions, this is Director Martinez. Carlos, it's Tom Garrett. I need to schedule an immediate security consultation regarding potential domestic compromise of my clearance. How immediate? This afternoon, if possible. And Carlos? I may need FBI liaison support for federal crimes. Jesus, Tom, what did you discover? Evidence suggesting my spouse is involved in a conspiracy that extends beyond adultery into potential insurance fraud and threats to my personal safety. I'm documenting everything and need guidance on proper procedure. Get in here now. Bring everything you've got. Tom spent the next 2 hours organizing his evidence into professional briefing format. Security camera footage, financial records, timeline analysis, pattern recognition data, and preliminary threat assessment. The material read like a classified intelligence report, except the target was his own wife and her lover. The irony wasn't lost on him. Tom Garrett, who analyzed threats to national security for a living, had been completely blindsided by a threat in his own kitchen. But now that he understood the scope of the conspiracy, his professional training provided clear protocols for response. Sarah and Mike had made the critical error of targeting someone with resources and expertise they couldn't comprehend. They'd assumed Tom was just another suburban husband who could be easily deceived and manipulated. Instead, they declared war on a man whose job was identifying and neutralizing threats. Tom locked his evidence files in the home safe and headed for his car. Whatever Sarah and Mike were planning, they had approximately 4 hours before Tom's security briefing turned their conspiracy into a federal case. The game had changed, and Tom intended to win. Director Carlos Martinez reviewed Tom's evidence files with the systematic attention that had made him legendary among defense contractors facing security challenges. His office overlooked downtown Austin, walls covered with commendations from various government agencies and photographs of Martinez with senior military officials. "This is comprehensive work," Martinez said finally, closing the laptop containing Tom's surveillance footage. "Your wife and her accomplice have created a clear pattern of conspiracy, but we need to understand the full scope before involving federal law enforcement." Tom sat across from Martinez's desk, feeling oddly calm despite the magnitude of what he'd discovered. Professional training had kicked in, allowing him to compartmentalize emotional responses while focusing on tactical objectives. "What's your assessment of the threat level?" Tom asked. Martinez pulled out a legal pad and began taking notes. "Direct threat to your security clearance is minimal, since you're self-reporting and maintaining protocols. Threat to your physical safety appears significant based on their operational security failures and escalating behavior patterns. The insurance angle? That's where things get federal. If they're planning your murder to collect life insurance, especially using information about your classified travel, we're looking at conspiracy to commit murder, insurance fraud, and potentially espionage charges depending on what information they've accessed." Martinez picked up his phone and dialed an extension. "Lisa, can you come to my office immediately? Bring the domestic threat protocols and your FBI liaison contact information." Agent Lisa Rodriguez entered the office 5 minutes later, carrying a thick folder and tablet computer. Tom recognized her from security briefings. Early 40s, former military intelligence, now specialized in investigating threats to cleared personnel. Her reputation for thoroughness was legendary among contractors. Tom's discovered what appears to be a sophisticated domestic conspiracy targeting him for insurance fraud and possible murder, Martinez explained, handing Rodriguez the evidence summary. Timeline analysis suggests planning phases consistent with organized criminal activity. Rodriguez reviewed the documents with professional efficiency, occasionally asking clarifying questions about surveillance methods and evidence collection procedures. Her expression remained neutral until she reached the section about increased insurance coverage and Sarah's research into Tom's travel destinations. This fits the pattern we've been tracking, Rodriguez said grimly. 3 similar cases in the past 18 months, all involving cleared personnel whose spouses developed relationships with individuals facing financial difficulties. The murder conspiracies tend to involve staged accidents during overseas travel. Tom felt cold, despite the office's warmth. They're actually planning to kill me? Based on this evidence, yes. The insurance increases, the research into your travel schedule, the careful coordination of their activities with your absence, all classic indicators of premeditated murder conspiracy. Rodriguez opened her tablet and began typing. I'm contacting FBI headquarters to coordinate federal investigation. This needs immediate attention. Martinez leaned forward. Tom, your security clearance requires complete cooperation with law enforcement, which works in our favor. You can continue surveillance and evidence gathering under FBI guidance without compromising your professional standing. What about confronting them directly? Absolutely not, Rodriguez said sharply. Murder conspirators who feel threatened accelerate their timeline. If they suspect you know about their plans, they might attempt immediate action rather than waiting for your next travel opportunity. The reality of his situation was settling in with uncomfortable clarity. Tom had been living with people who were actively planning his murder, eating dinner with a wife who researched travel destinations where accidents would be easier to arrange, sharing his bed with someone who discussed insurance payouts with her lover. How do we proceed? Tom asked. Rodriguez consulted her tablet. Coordinated investigation with federal oversight. You continue normal routines while we document their activities and identify all participants. Once we have comprehensive evidence, we arrange simultaneous arrest to prevent anyone from escaping or destroying evidence. Timeline? 2 to 3 weeks if they maintain current patterns. Longer if they're more cautious than the evidence suggests. Rodriguez looked up from her notes. Tom, I need you to understand that this investigation will likely reveal additional crimes and participants. Murder conspiracies rarely involve just 2 people. Martinez nodded grimly. Your wife's friend Jennifer is almost certainly involved as an accomplice. Mike's business associates might be providing logistical support. There could be others in your neighborhood or a social circle who've been compromised. Tom thought about the recent barbecues and social gatherings where Mike had been present, the casual conversations about Tom's work and travel schedule. How many people had been gathering intelligence while pretending to be friends? What about my immediate safety? We'll coordinate with local law enforcement for enhanced protection during your travel, Rodriguez explained. But maintaining normal routines is crucial for allowing them to reveal the full scope of their conspiracy. Any deviation from established patterns might trigger acceleration of their timeline. Tom's phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. Coffee with Jennifer canceled. Home by 5. What should we do for dinner? The casual normalcy of her message felt surreal. Sarah was probably coordinating with Mike about their next opportunity to advance their murder plot while texting her husband about dinner plans. I should respond normally, Tom said, showing the message to Rodriguez. Yes, but don't suggest any travel plans or schedule changes. Let them think you're completely unaware of their activities. Rodriguez made additional notes. I'll have surveillance teams in place by tomorrow morning. From now on, every conversation they have will be documented. Martinez stood up and moved to his window overlooking the city. Tom, there's something else you need to consider. When this investigation concludes, your life is going to change dramatically. Professional success, probably, since handling this properly will enhance your security reputation. But personally, my marriage is over, Tom finished. My wife has been planning to murder me for insurance money. I think I can handle the personal adjustments. Rodriguez looked up from her notes. There's also the probability that this case will become a training example for other agencies. Your evidence gathering and systematic approach could help protect other cleared personnel facing similar threats. The thought of his marriage becoming a cautionary tale for security professionals felt strange, but Tom supposed it was preferable to becoming a murder victim. At least this way, his experience might prevent other people from falling into similar traps. One more thing, Rodriguez added. When we arrest them, the charges will likely include federal conspiracy to commit murder under 18 U.S.C. Section 956, since they're planning to kill you during international travel. Sarah could face 8 to 12 years in federal prison. Mike could face 15 to 20 given his role as the primary planner. Tom tried to imagine Sarah in federal prison, trading her elementary school classroom for a maximum security facility, her teacher's pension for prison wages. The transformation seemed almost impossible to comprehend. What happens to her teaching career? Terminated immediately upon arrest due to moral turpitude clauses in her contract, Martinez explained. Teaching credential permanently revoked after conviction. Pension forfeiture automatic for felony convictions involving breach of public trust. Sarah had worked for 15 years to build her career in education, taking graduate courses and professional development workshops, investing in retirement benefits and long-term financial security. All of it would disappear because she'd chosen to solve her marital dissatisfaction through murder conspiracy. Tom's phone buzzed again. Another text from Sarah. "Love you, honey. Looking forward to a quiet evening together." Rodriguez shook her head in disgust. The psychological profile suggests narcissistic personality disorder with sociopathic tendencies. She genuinely believes she can continue deceiving you indefinitely while planning your murder. "How long have you been doing this kind of work?" Tom asked. 12 years with the Bureau, specializing in domestic threats to cleared personnel for the past 5 years. Your case is among the most sophisticated I've encountered, but also the most poorly executed. Their operational security is terrible. Martinez returned to his desk and pulled out a business card. "Tom, this is going to be intense for the next few weeks. I want you to have my personal number and Rodriguez's contact information. Any change in their behavior patterns, any escalation of timeline, any threat to your safety, you call immediately." Tom pocketed the cards and stood to leave. "What about tonight? Do I go home and pretend everything is normal?" "Exactly that," Rodriguez confirmed. "Dinner conversation, television, normal bedtime routine. Let Sarah believe her deception is working perfectly while we document every aspect of their conspiracy." Tom shook hands with both investigators and headed for the elevator, feeling like he was returning to enemy territory rather than his own home. The suburban house where he'd lived for 8 years had become a surveillance target and crime scene, his marriage bed a place where he slept next to someone actively planning his murder. But Tom Garrett was a professional, and professionals adapted to changing mission parameters. Sarah and Mike thought they were hunting a naive victim, but they'd actually awakened a predator with resources and expertise they couldn't begin to imagine. The hunter had become the hunted, and they didn't even know the game had started. Tom arrived home at 5:30 p.m. to find Sarah's car already in the driveway, music playing softly through the kitchen windows. She'd changed from her school clothes into casual jeans and a sweater, hair pulled back in the style she favored for relaxed evenings. If Tom hadn't seen surveillance footage of her passionate embrace with Mike Davidson 24 hours earlier, he might have appreciated the domestic scene. "Perfect timing," Sarah called from the kitchen as Tom entered through the garage. "I picked up ingredients for that pasta dish you like. Thought we could have a nice quiet dinner since you've been traveling so much lately." Tom hung his jacket in the closet and joined her in the kitchen, noting that the magnetic arrangement had been removed from the refrigerator. Sarah and Mike had apparently realized their mistake and corrected it, but too late to prevent discovery. "Sounds perfect," Tom replied, opening a beer and settling at the breakfast bar to watch Sarah cook. "How was coffee with Jennifer?" "Oh, we ended up canceling. She had some crisis with her renovation project. Apparently, Mike the contractor had to reschedule something urgent." Sarah's voice remained casual, but Tom caught the slight pause before Mike's name. Jennifer's fictional crisis had probably been cover for Mike to visit their house while Sarah was still at school, Tom realized. The coordination between Sarah and her accomplices was becoming clearer as he learned to recognize the deception patterns. "That's too bad. Is Jennifer's project running behind schedule?" "A little, but Mike's really good at what he does. Very thorough, very professional. She's lucky to have found someone so reliable." Sarah stirred the pasta sauce with apparent innocence, describing her lover's professional qualities to her husband. Tom sipped his beer and marveled at Sarah's ability to maintain casual conversation while discussing the man she was sleeping with in Tom's bed. Either she was a natural sociopath, or years of teaching elementary school had developed impressive acting skills. "Speaking of reliable contractors, when did you want to start our bathroom renovation? I could probably take a few days off next month to oversee the work." Sarah's stirring motion hesitated slightly. "Actually, I've been thinking we should wait until summer. The school year is so busy right now, and I'd rather have time to properly supervise the project. Translation. Sarah didn't want Tom home during the day when Mike would normally be visiting. The bathroom renovation was probably fictional, just an excuse for Mike to visit their house and establish familiarity with their routines. Makes sense, Tom agreed. No rush on the project. I'd rather do it right than do it quickly. Sarah smiled and resumed cooking, apparently relieved that Tom hadn't pressed for immediate action. She had no way of knowing that Tom now understood her real motivations for delay, or that federal investigators were already analyzing her conversation patterns for evidence of conspiracy. Dinner proceeded with surreal normalcy. Sarah discussed her students' progress on reading assessments, mentioned problems with the school's aging computer network, and described plans for spring field trips. Tom shared carefully edited information about his work projects, avoiding any details that might influence Sarah's coordination with Mike about his travel schedule. "How's the quarterly briefing coming along?" Sarah asked, refilling Tom's wine glass with attentive care. "On schedule. I'll probably need to travel again next month for client presentations, but nothing too extended." Tom watched Sarah's reaction carefully, noting the slight brightening in her expression. "Where are you thinking this time?" Tom had prepared for this question based on Rodriguez's guidance about feeding controlled information to the conspirators. "Could be international. The defense contracts include some overseas installations that require on-site assessment." "That sounds exciting. Dangerous at all?" The question felt loaded with significance that Sarah was trying to conceal. Tom maintained casual tone while recognizing that she was gathering intelligence about opportunities for staged accidents. "Not really. Standard security protocols, reliable transportation, established facilities. Pretty routine stuff." Sarah nodded thoughtfully, probably calculating how routine overseas travel might provide opportunities for murder that would be difficult to investigate. Tom wondered if she would share this information with Mike tonight, or wait until their next planned meeting. After dinner, they settled in the living room to watch television. Sarah curled against Tom's shoulder with apparent contentment. Her physical affection felt genuine, which disturbed Tom more than obvious coldness would have. Sarah was capable of planning his murder while simultaneously enjoying intimate contact with him, suggesting psychological detachment that bordered on pathological. "I love evenings like this," Sarah murmured during a commercial break. "Just the two of us. No distractions, no pressure. Sometimes I think we should travel together more often." Tom almost laughed at the irony. Sarah was suggesting romantic travel while secretly planning his murder during business travel, apparently without recognizing the contradiction in her statements. "Where would you want to go?" Tom asked, curious about her response. "Somewhere warm and relaxing. Maybe Europe in the spring or a beach resort in the Caribbean. Someplace where we could just focus on each other without work interruptions." Tom realized that Sarah's fantasy involved spending his life insurance money on romantic vacations with Mike, probably using the same travel destinations she was currently researching for murder opportunities. The casual cruelty of her planning was becoming more apparent with each conversation. Tom's phone buzzed with a work email marked urgent. Rodriguez, providing an update on surveillance preparations and requesting confirmation of Tom's availability for additional briefings tomorrow. "Work emergency?" Sarah asked, noting his concentration on the phone. "Just coordination for next week's briefing. Nothing that can't wait until morning." Tom closed the email and returned attention to the television, where a detective show was ironically featuring a murder for insurance plot. Sarah watched the fictional investigation with apparent interest, occasionally commenting on the detective's methods or the killer's mistakes. Tom wondered if she was learning from the entertainment, trying to avoid similar errors in her own planning, or simply enjoying dramatic irony. When they went to bed, Sarah was affectionate and responsive, initiating intimacy with enthusiasm that felt completely natural. Tom found himself responding despite knowing about her betrayal, his body reacting to familiar patterns while his mind cataloged evidence of her deception. Afterward, Sarah fell asleep quickly, breathing deeply with her head on Tom's shoulder. Tom lay awake staring at the ceiling, thinking about the woman beside him who was planning his murder while sleeping peacefully in his arms. The psychological disconnect was almost impossible to comprehend. Tom's phone vibrated silently with a text message from Rodriguez. Surveillance team in position. Audio equipment active. Continue normal routine tomorrow. Everything is being documented. Tom deleted the message and tried to sleep, knowing that tomorrow would bring additional evidence of Sarah's conspiracy and closer proximity to the moment when her carefully constructed deception would collapse entirely. But tonight, Tom Garrett slept beside his wife for what would probably be the last time, listening to her breathe while federal agents monitored their house and prepared to document the destruction of their marriage through criminal prosecution. The next morning brought autumn rain and Sarah's usual Thursday routine: early departure for faculty meetings, afternoon parent conferences, evening plans with unspecified colleagues. Tom watched her leave for school with a brief kiss and casual promise to call later, her demeanor completely consistent with 11 years of similar mornings. Tom waited until Sarah's car disappeared around the corner, then accessed his laptop and called Rodriguez's secure number. "Any overnight activity?" Tom asked. Text messages between Sarah and Jennifer at 11:47 p.m. and 6:23 a.m., both using coded language about project coordination and timeline adjustments. Mike Davidson's phone remained in his apartment all night, but his location services showed movement at 2:15 a.m. that GPS tracked to a convenience store 3 blocks from your house. Tom felt his stomach clench. He was in the neighborhood while I was asleep? Possibly conducting surveillance or meeting with local accomplices. We're analyzing security cameras from businesses in the area to track his actual movements. Rodriguez paused. Tom, we need to accelerate our investigation timeline. Their behavior patterns suggest they're preparing for immediate action. What kind of immediate action? Unknown, but the increase in coordination activity and Mike's late-night reconnaissance suggests they're moving beyond planning phase into operational implementation. Tom looked around his kitchen, imagining Mike Davidson moving through these same rooms while Tom slept upstairs with Sarah. The violation felt more personal than the adultery. His home had become a staging area for murder conspiracy. What do you need from me? Detailed information about your upcoming travel schedule, real and fictional. We're going to feed them false intelligence about a high-risk overseas assignment and monitor their response. If they're planning your murder, they'll accelerate their timeline around this opportunity. Tom opened his work calendar and began reviewing upcoming projects. I've got legitimate travel to Washington next week, but I could create a fictional assignment involving overseas assessment work. Something dangerous enough to provide opportunity, but vague enough to allow flexibility. Perfect. Create documentation that Sarah might access accidentally. Leave travel authorizations on your desk. Discuss the assignment during phone calls she can overhear. Mention security concerns that would make accidents more likely. Rodriguez was essentially asking Tom to bait his wife into accelerating her murder plans, using himself as target to gather evidence of federal crimes. The strategy made tactical sense, but the emotional reality felt surreal. How quickly do you expect them to respond? Based on similar cases within 48 hours, if they're serious about killing you, a high-risk overseas assignment represents an ideal opportunity they won't want to miss. Tom's phone rang. His supervisor at the contracting company, probably with actual work assignments that would need to be balanced against fictional murder bait. Garrett. Tom, it's Patricia Wells again. My friend wants to accelerate the timeline for documenting those hypothetical criminal activities we discussed yesterday. Tom paused, recognizing that Patricia's call meant someone else was monitoring Sarah's activities independently of the FBI investigation. What kind of acceleration? Evidence suggests the hypothetical criminals are planning immediate action against my friend. Legal intervention needs to happen within the next few days to prevent serious consequences. I'll pass that information along to the appropriate federal agencies, Tom replied carefully, aware that Rodriguez was probably monitoring this conversation. Tom, my friend should be extremely careful about his personal safety until this situation is resolved. Hypothetical murder conspirators don't typically provide advance warning. The call ended, leaving Tom with growing understanding that multiple agencies were coordinating around Sarah's activities. His wife's murder conspiracy had attracted federal attention that extended far beyond his individual case. Tom spent the morning creating fictional travel documents, drafting authorizations for a classified overseas assignment that would require 2 weeks in a Middle Eastern location known for dangerous working conditions. He left the documents strategically placed where Sarah might encounter them accidentally, along with printed emails discussing security protocols and insurance considerations. At lunch, Tom received a call from Sarah that felt different from her usual check-ins. "Hi, honey. How's your day going?" "Busy with travel planning. Looks like I might have an overseas assignment coming up sooner than expected." "Oh, really? Where?" Sarah's voice carried carefully controlled interest. "Can't discuss details over the phone, but it's a challenging location. Security concerns, infrastructure problems, the kind of assignment that pays well because of increased risk factors." "That sounds scary. Are you sure it's safe?" Tom almost smiled at Sarah's fake concern for his safety while she was actively planning his murder. "Company has excellent insurance coverage and security protocols. Risk assessment suggests the assignment is manageable with proper precautions." "When would this happen?" "Possibly next week, depending on client requirements. I'll know more this afternoon." Tom was feeding Sarah exactly the information Rodriguez had requested. Short timeline, dangerous location, high insurance stakes. "I love you, Tom. Please be careful with these overseas assignments." "I love you too, Sarah. I'll call you this afternoon with updates." Tom hung up and immediately called Rodriguez to report the conversation. "Perfect execution," Rodriguez confirmed. "We monitored the call and Sarah's biometric responses indicated significant stress and excitement. She's definitely planning to coordinate with Mike about this opportunity." "Timeline for their response?" "Our surveillance teams are already in position. If they react predictably, Sarah will contact Mike within the next 2 hours, and they'll meet this evening to finalize their planning." Tom spent the afternoon at his office, creating additional fictional documentation while monitoring his phone for updates from Rodriguez. The surreal nature of the situation was becoming routine, creating false evidence to trap his wife in a murder conspiracy while maintaining normal work productivity. At 3:47 p.m., Rodriguez called with an update. Sarah contacted Mike at 3:23 p.m. using coded language about urgent project coordination. "Mike left his current worksite immediately and is heading toward your neighborhood. They're meeting at Jennifer's house at 4:15 p.m. "Jennifer's house?" "Confirmed. Our surveillance team has audio equipment positioned to monitor their conversation. Whatever they're planning, we'll have comprehensive documentation within the next hour." Tom drove home through afternoon traffic, knowing that his wife was 3 blocks away planning his murder while he listened to commuter radio updates about traffic accidents and weather forecasts. The irony felt appropriate. Sarah was hoping to create a traffic accident, just in a different country. Tom's phone buzzed with updates from Rodriguez throughout the evening. Sarah and Mike had met with Jennifer for 90 minutes, discussing logistics for handling Tom's overseas opportunity. Audio surveillance had captured detailed planning for contact with overseas associates, who could arrange an accident during Tom's fictional assignment. Sarah arrived home at 6:30 p.m. with bright energy and cheerful demeanor, greeting Tom with enthusiastic affection and apparent excitement about cooking his favorite dinner. "How did the travel planning go?" she asked, while preparing chicken parmesan, Tom's preferred meal before stressful assignments. "Confirmed for next week. 2 weeks in a challenging location, but the compensation package is excellent." Tom watched Sarah's reaction carefully, noting the satisfaction she was trying to conceal. "I'll miss you, but I'm proud of the important work you're doing. Just promise me you'll be extra careful." Tom nodded seriously, appreciating the performance Sarah was giving while knowing she was hoping he would be extra careless. "Company security protocols are comprehensive. Insurance coverage is excellent. Risk management suggests this assignment is manageable with proper preparation." Sarah's smile seemed genuine as she served dinner, probably because she was interpreting Tom's words as confirmation that his murder would provide substantial insurance benefits with minimal investigation complications. "When do you leave?" "Monday morning, flight to Washington for briefings, then overseas departure Wednesday." "I'll pack your favorite travel clothes and make sure you have everything you need." Sarah's domestic attentiveness felt like she was preparing Tom for his own funeral, which he probably was. Dinner conversation focused on Tom's fictional assignment, with Sarah asking detailed questions about his planned activities, security arrangements, and insurance coverage. Tom provided carefully scripted responses designed to confirm Sarah's expectations about murder opportunities while gathering evidence of her intent. After dinner, Sarah suggested they spend quiet time together since Tom would be traveling soon. They watched a movie while Sarah curled against him with apparent contentment, occasionally commenting about how much she would miss him during his extended absence. "I hope this assignment goes well for your career," Sarah said during commercial breaks. "You work so hard, and you deserve recognition for your expertise." Tom almost laughed at the irony. Sarah was hoping Tom's murder would advance her relationship with Mike while expressing fake concern about Tom's professional advancement. When they went to bed, Sarah was particularly affectionate, initiating intimacy with enthusiasm that felt like a farewell performance. Tom responded mechanically while thinking about the federal agents monitoring his house and the murder conspirators who believed they were about to execute the perfect crime. Tom's phone vibrated silently with final updates from Rodriguez. Comprehensive evidence documented. Multiple federal charges confirmed. Arrest coordination scheduled for Friday morning when they finalize operational details. Tom deleted the message and tried to sleep, knowing that tomorrow would bring the final phase of Sarah's conspiracy and the beginning of her destruction through federal prosecution. Friday morning, Tom maintained his normal routine while knowing that federal agents were positioning for coordinated arrest of his wife and her accomplices. Sarah left for school with unusual cheerfulness, kissing Tom goodbye with what felt like genuine affection, despite her active planning for his murder. Tom called in sick to work and spent the morning organizing final evidence documentation while monitoring updates from Rodriguez. Sarah had scheduled afternoon meetings with Mike and Jennifer to finalize project coordination, apparently unaware that federal surveillance teams were documenting every aspect of their conspiracy. At 11:30 a.m., Rodriguez called with final briefing information. "We're executing coordinated arrests this afternoon when they meet to finalize murder logistics. Federal charges include conspiracy to commit murder under 18 U.S.C. Section 956, insurance fraud, and criminal exploitation of a cleared defense contractor." "What about my role during the arrests?" "You'll be present for Sarah's arrest at your house around 4 p.m. Mike and Jennifer will be arrested simultaneously at her residence. We want Sarah to understand that her conspiracy has been completely exposed and documented." Tom spent the afternoon preparing mentally for confronting Sarah with evidence of her betrayal while federal agents arrested her for planning his murder. The emotional reality was finally catching up with the analytical process he'd used to maintain professional detachment. At 3:45 p.m., Tom's doorbell rang. Agent Rodriguez stood on his front porch with 2 additional FBI agents, all wearing body armor and carrying arrest warrants. "Tom, we're ready to proceed. Sarah should arrive home in approximately 10 minutes based on her normal schedule. Are you prepared for this confrontation?" Tom nodded, though he wasn't sure anyone could be truly prepared for arresting their spouse for conspiracy to commit murder. "What exactly will happen?" "We'll allow Sarah to enter the house normally, then present her with evidence of the conspiracy before making the arrest. Her reaction will help determine if there are additional participants we haven't identified." Sarah's Honda Civic pulled into the driveway at 3:57 p.m., exactly on schedule. Tom watched through the living room window as she gathered her school materials and approached the front door with casual familiarity, completely unaware that federal agents were waiting inside her house with arrest warrants. Sarah entered through the garage and called out cheerfully, "Honey, I'm home. How was your day?" Tom emerged from the living room with Rodriguez and the arrest team, watching Sarah's expression transform from domestic happiness to confusion to growing horror as she realized what was happening. "Sarah Garrett," Rodriguez announced formally, "you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder under Federal Statute 18 U.S.C. Section 956, conspiracy to commit insurance fraud and criminal exploitation of a defense contractor with security clearance." Sarah stared at Tom with complete incomprehension, apparently unable to process that her husband had discovered her conspiracy and coordinated with federal law enforcement for her arrest. "Tom, what is this? What's happening?" Rodriguez stepped forward with handcuffs. "Mrs. Garrett, you have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law." "Tom, tell them this is a mistake. I don't understand what they're talking about." Tom looked at his wife of 11 years, thinking about the magnetic arrangement that had started his investigation and the months of surveillance footage that documented her conspiracy with Mike Davidson. "Sarah, I know about Mike. I know about the spare key, the coordination with my travel schedule, the insurance research, the planning sessions with Jennifer. I've been documenting everything for weeks. Sarah's face went pale as she realized the extent of Tom's knowledge and the comprehensive nature of the evidence against her. The magnet arrangement on our refrigerator was particularly helpful, Tom continued. Mike apparently thought it was romantic to spell out your names in our kitchen. Unfortunately for both of you, I happened to notice it. Rodriguez completed the arrest procedures while explaining the charges to Sarah, who seemed to be experiencing psychological shock as she understood that her carefully planned conspiracy had been completely exposed. Michael Davidson and Jennifer Walsh are being arrested simultaneously at Mrs. Walsh's residence, Rodriguez informed Sarah. Their cooperation with federal authorities will be considered during sentencing negotiations. Sarah looked at Tom with growing desperation. Tom, I love you. Whatever you think you know, I can explain. This is all a misunderstanding. Sarah, you were planning to have me murdered during my overseas assignment to collect insurance money so you could start a new life with Mike. Federal agents have recordings of your planning sessions and documented evidence of your conspiracy. There's nothing to explain. Rodriguez led Sarah toward the front door, reading additional Miranda warnings while Sarah protested her innocence and begged Tom to intervene on her behalf. Tom, please! I would never hurt you. I love you. Tom watched his wife being placed in a federal arrest vehicle, thinking about their 11 years of marriage and how completely Sarah had betrayed everything their relationship represented. But he also thought about the new chapter of his life that was beginning. A chapter where his professional expertise had protected him from people who'd tried to exploit his trust and murder him for financial gain. Rodriguez returned to the house after Sarah's transport to federal holding facilities. Tom, the investigation will continue for several weeks as we build the case for prosecution, but the immediate threat to your safety has been eliminated. How are you handling this emotionally? Tom considered the question seriously. Better than I expected. I think the weeks of investigation helped me process the betrayal gradually, rather than experiencing sudden shock. And frankly, knowing that Sarah was planning my murder makes the adultery seem almost trivial by comparison. The federal charges are serious enough to ensure long prison sentences. Sarah will probably serve 8 to 12 years. Mike could face 15 to 20 years depending on his cooperation with prosecution. Tom nodded, thinking about Sarah trading her elementary school classroom for a federal prison cell, her teacher's pension for prison wages, her suburban lifestyle for maximum security confinement. What happens next for me professionally? Your security clearance will be enhanced based on your exemplary handling of this situation. Government contractors will consider you an expert in recognizing and responding to domestic threats. Your career prospects are actually improved by this experience. Tom's phone rang. His supervisor at the contracting company, probably with updates about the federal investigation and its impact on his work assignments. Garrett. Tom, it's Patricia Wells. Congratulations on the successful resolution of your friend's hypothetical situation. The legal community is very impressed with the thoroughness of the investigation and the comprehensive evidence documentation. Tom realized that Patricia's call meant the divorce proceedings could now move forward with criminal conviction evidence that would ensure Sarah received minimal assets and no alimony. Thank you for the guidance during the hypothetical planning phase, Tom replied. My friend should expect very favorable outcomes in all legal proceedings. Federal criminal conviction essentially guarantees fault-based divorce with maximum asset protection. Tom hung up and looked around his house, thinking about how different everything felt now that Sarah's conspiracy had been exposed and neutralized. The suburban home that had been a staging area for murder planning was now simply his residence, no longer contaminated by deception and betrayal. Rodriguez prepared to leave, handing Tom contact information for ongoing investigation support and victim advocacy services. Tom, one final consideration. This case will probably become a training example for other agencies and cleared personnel. Your systematic approach to gathering evidence and coordinating with law enforcement will help protect other people facing similar threats. Tom thought about other defense contractors who might be targeted by domestic conspirators, other marriages that might be destroyed by financial exploitation and murder planning. If his experience could help protect them, Sarah's betrayal would at least serve some positive purpose. I'm willing to participate in training programs and case studies, Tom confirmed. Rodriguez shook his hand and headed for her vehicle, leaving Tom alone in his house for the first time since discovering the magnetic evidence that had started his investigation. Tom opened a beer and sat in his kitchen, looking at the refrigerator where colorful alphabet magnets had once spelled out his wife's love affair and inadvertently exposed her murder conspiracy. The irony still felt incredible. Sarah and Mike's romantic gesture had triggered a federal investigation that would result in decades of prison sentences and complete destruction of their lives. Tom's phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. "Congratulations on successfully neutralizing domestic threats to your security clearance. Future consulting opportunities available for qualified professionals. Rodriguez recommended your expertise." Tom smiled, realizing that his ordeal with Sarah's betrayal was transforming into professional opportunity and enhanced reputation. Sarah and Mike had tried to destroy his life through murder conspiracy, but instead, they'd inadvertently launched his career as a domestic security expert. Tom raised his beer in a mock toast to the empty kitchen. "Thank you, Sarah. You've helped me discover talents I never knew I had." Tom Garrett, security analyst, had successfully identified and neutralized a domestic threat using professional expertise and federal resources. Tom Garrett, husband, was learning to live with the complete destruction of his marriage through criminal prosecution. But Tom Garrett, survivor, was planning a future built on the wreckage of other people's criminal stupidity and greedy ambition. Sarah and Mike had declared war on the wrong target, and they were about to spend the next decade learning exactly how costly their mistake had been. 6 weeks after Sarah's arrest, Tom testified before a federal grand jury that returned comprehensive indictments against all three conspirators. The evidence was so thorough and well documented that defense attorneys immediately began negotiating plea agreements rather than attempting trial defense. Sarah's federal public defender, a competent attorney named David Kim, requested a private meeting with Tom to discuss potential plea negotiations. "Mr. Garrett, my client is interested in accepting responsibility for her actions in exchange for reduced sentencing recommendations," Kim explained in the federal courthouse conference room. Tom sat across from Kim with Patricia Wells, his divorce attorney, who had become expert in coordinating criminal and civil proceedings. "What kind of responsibility?" Tom asked. "Full admission of conspiracy to commit murder, insurance fraud, and criminal exploitation. Sarah is prepared to provide complete cooperation with prosecution of Michael Davidson and Jennifer Walsh in exchange for the minimum sentence under federal guidelines." Tom considered the offer. Sarah's cooperation might help ensure maximum sentences for Mike and Jennifer, who had arguably played larger roles in developing the murder conspiracy. What would her sentence be with cooperation? 8 years federal prison, followed by supervised probation with restitution requirements. Her teaching credential would be permanently revoked, pension forfeited, and she would face deportation proceedings after discovering she falsified citizenship documents during her original naturalization. Tom learned something new about his wife every week, apparently. Sarah had lied about her immigration status in addition to planning his murder, suggesting that deception was a fundamental aspect of her personality rather than a recent development. The deportation is automatic? Her naturalization involved false statements about criminal history that she concealed from immigration authorities. ICE will initiate removal proceedings immediately after she completes her prison sentence. Tom thought about Sarah spending 8 years in federal prison followed by deportation to a country she'd left 15 years ago. The complete destruction of her American life felt proportionate to her attempt to murder him for insurance money. "I'll agree to the plea negotiations," Tom decided, "but I want maximum sentences for Davidson and Walsh. Their roles in planning and coordination justify severe punishment." Kim nodded and made notes. The prosecutor indicated that Davidson's sentence will probably be 15 to 18 years given his leadership role in the conspiracy. Walsh could face 5 to 8 years for providing logistical support and coordination. After the meeting, Tom walked downtown Austin with Patricia Wells, discussing the civil aspects of his divorce proceedings. "The criminal conviction evidence makes your divorce extremely straightforward," Patricia explained. "Texas fault-based divorce allows you to retain all marital assets when your spouse is convicted of felony crimes against you. Sarah will receive essentially nothing." "What about the house?" "Entirely yours. Sarah's criminal conviction forfeits any claim to property or assets acquired during the marriage." Her pension has already been seized for restitution payments. Tom thought about Sarah losing her house, her career, her retirement security, her American citizenship, and her freedom for the next 8 years. The magnitude of destruction she'd brought on herself felt almost impossible to comprehend. Any possibility of her appealing the conviction? Extremely unlikely. The evidence is overwhelming, and federal conspiracy charges carry mandatory sentencing guidelines that limit judicial discretion. Sarah's best option is cooperating with prosecution to minimize her sentence. Tom's phone rang. Agent Rodriguez with updates about the ongoing investigation. Tom, we've discovered additional evidence that expands the scope of the conspiracy. Michael Davidson had been researching similar schemes involving other cleared defense contractors in the Austin area. You may not have been his only target. Tom felt cold despite the warm October afternoon. How many other targets? 3 additional cleared personnel whose spouses had developed relationships with Davidson's associates. We're investigating whether this was an organized criminal enterprise specifically targeting government contractors for insurance fraud and murder. Is that federal racketeering? RICO charges are possible if we can prove organized criminal enterprise. Davidson could face life in prison if we establish pattern of conspiracy targeting multiple victims. Tom realized that Sarah's conspiracy with Mike might have been part of a larger criminal organization that targeted cleared defense contractors throughout Central Texas. The scope of the threat was far beyond what he'd initially discovered. What do you need from me? Continued cooperation with investigation and potential testimony in additional cases. Your expertise in recognizing domestic threats could help identify other victims and prevent future targeting. Tom agreed to continued cooperation, understanding that his role was evolving from victim to expert witness in what might become a major federal racketeering case. After ending the call, Tom realized that his experience with Sarah's betrayal was transforming into professional opportunity that could define the next phase of his career. Government agencies were recognizing his expertise in domestic threat recognition, and private security firms were expressing interest in his consulting services. Tom's phone buzzed with an email from his supervisor at the defense contracting company. Tom, congratulations on successful resolution of domestic security threat. Enhanced clearance approved for promotion to senior security analyst. Significant salary increase and expanded project responsibility effective immediately. Tom smiled, realizing that Sarah's attempt to destroy his life had actually accelerated his professional advancement and established his reputation as an expert in domestic security threats. That evening, Tom met with Agent Rodriguez and several other federal investigators at a secure conference facility to discuss his potential role in broader investigations. Tom, your systematic approach to evidence gathering and threat analysis has impressed multiple agencies, Rodriguez explained. We'd like to offer you consulting opportunities that would complement your current defense contractor position. What kind of consulting? Training programs for cleared personnel on recognizing domestic threats, consulting with other victims of similar conspiracies, expert testimony in federal cases involving defense contractor targeting. Tom considered the opportunities, realizing that his expertise could help protect other people from the kind of conspiracy he'd experienced with Sarah. I'm interested in helping other victims and preventing similar crimes, Tom confirmed. What would the commitment involve? Flexible schedule coordinated with your primary employment. Compensation competitive with private security consulting. Security clearance enhancement to support classified aspects of domestic threat analysis. Tom agreed to the consulting arrangement, understanding that Sarah's betrayal had inadvertently launched his second career as a domestic security expert. 3 months later, Tom received notification that Sarah's plea agreement had been finalized. She would serve 8 years in federal prison followed by supervised probation and deportation proceedings. Mike Davidson had received 18 years for his leadership role in the conspiracy, and Jennifer Walsh had been sentenced to 6 years for her coordination activities. Tom's divorce was finalized with complete asset retention and no alimony obligations. Sarah's criminal conviction had eliminated any claim she might have had to marital property or ongoing support. Tom's consulting business was expanding rapidly as government agencies and private security firms recognized his expertise in domestic threat recognition. His reputation as someone who had successfully identified and neutralized a sophisticated murder conspiracy was opening doors throughout the security industry. Tom's personal life was also improving. Agent Rodriguez had expressed personal interest that extended beyond their professional relationship, and they had begun dating with the careful attention to security protocols that their respective careers required. "It's ironic," Rodriguez commented during dinner at an upscale downtown restaurant. "Sarah's attempt to destroy your life has actually improved every aspect of your future." Tom considered her observation while thinking about his enhanced career prospects, increased financial security, and developing relationship with someone who understood and respected his professional expertise. "I suppose I should thank Sarah for helping me discover talents I never knew I had," Tom replied, "though I doubt she intended to launch my career as a domestic security consultant. Her loss is definitely your gain, and the security community's gain, since your expertise is helping protect other cleared personnel from similar threats." Tom raised his wine glass in a toast to unintended consequences and professional opportunity. Rodriguez smiled and touched her glass to his. "To people who are smart enough to turn betrayal into advancement." 1 year after discovering the magnetic evidence that had exposed Sarah's murder conspiracy, Tom Garrett was living a completely transformed life. His career had expanded beyond defense contracting into domestic security consulting that was both professionally satisfying and financially rewarding. His relationship with Lisa Rodriguez had developed into partnership built on mutual respect for expertise and shared commitment to protecting national security. Tom's expertise was in demand throughout the security community. He'd testified in congressional hearings about domestic threats to cleared personnel, consulted on federal cases involving similar conspiracies, and developed training programs that were being implemented across multiple government agencies. Sarah remained in federal prison, serving her 8-year sentence while facing deportation proceedings that would prevent her from ever returning to the United States. Mike Davidson was serving 18 years and facing additional RICO charges as investigators had proved his involvement in organized criminal enterprise targeting defense contractors. Jennifer Walsh had been released after serving 4 years but faced permanent exclusion from nursing licenses and ongoing restitution obligations. Tom's house had been completely renovated and redecorated, eliminating any reminders of his marriage to Sarah while incorporating security features that reflected his enhanced professional standing. The kitchen where he'd discovered the magnetic evidence was now a showcase of modern appliances and technology that supported his consulting business. Tom's phone rang with another consulting opportunity, a defense contractor in San Antonio, whose spouse had exhibited suspicious behavior patterns similar to Sarah's conspiracy indicators. "Garrett Domestic Security Consulting. This is Tom." "Mr. Garrett, I think I need your help. My wife has been acting strangely since I received my security clearance upgrade, and I found evidence that she's been researching my travel schedule and insurance coverage." Tom opened his laptop and accessed the secure consultation protocols he developed for investigating domestic threats to cleared personnel. "I can help you document the evidence and coordinate with appropriate federal agencies if criminal activity is suspected. When can we meet to discuss your situation in detail?" Tom scheduled the consultation appointment, thinking about how his expertise was helping protect other people from the kind of betrayal he'd experienced with Sarah. Each successful case enhanced his reputation and expanded his opportunities in the domestic security field. Lisa Rodriguez was arriving for dinner, bringing case files from another federal investigation where Tom's consulting expertise might be valuable. Their relationship combined personal affection with professional collaboration that strengthened both their careers. Tom looked around his transformed house, thinking about the journey from discovering magnetic evidence of adultery to building a career as a domestic security expert. Sarah's betrayal had destroyed her own life while accidentally launching Tom's success in a field he'd never considered before their marriage imploded. The irony still felt incredible. Sarah and Mike had tried to murder Tom for insurance money, but instead, they'd provided him with the experience and expertise that made him valuable to government agencies and security firms throughout the country. Tom Garrett had survived domestic terrorism and transformed the experience into professional advantage that would define the rest of his career. Sarah's magnetic message had inadvertently spelled out her own destruction while launching Tom's future as someone who protected other people from similar threats. It was the best possible outcome for everyone except the criminals who'd created the situation through their own greed and stupidity. Tom opened a bottle of wine and prepared dinner for Lisa, thinking about their evening plans and weekend trip to Washington for security conferences where Tom would present his latest research on domestic threat recognition. Life after magnetic evidence was better than Tom had ever imagined possible, and it was only getting better as his reputation and expertise continued to expand throughout the security community. Sarah Garrett, former elementary school teacher and attempted murderer, had 8 years of federal prison to contemplate how badly she'd misjudged her husband's capabilities and resources. Tom doubted she'd learned anything useful from the experience, but he hoped future conspirators would be deterred by her example. Tom Garrett, domestic security expert and survivor of attempted murder, was living proof that expertise and systematic thinking could overcome any threat, even when that threat came from within his own marriage. The magnetic evidence had revealed far more than adultery. It had exposed criminal conspiracy and launched a career built on protecting other people from similar threats. And that felt like justice. 2 years after Sarah's arrest, Tom received an unexpected phone call that would bring his story full circle in the most satisfying way possible. "Tom, this is Director Martinez. I have news about Sarah that I thought you should hear directly." Tom was in his home office, preparing consultation materials for a federal case involving defense contractor targeting in Virginia. His domestic security consulting business had expanded nationwide, and he was recognized as the premier expert in protecting cleared personnel from domestic threats. "What kind of news?" "Sarah's deportation proceedings have been completed. ICE transported her to the airport this morning for removal to Canada, where she'll face additional criminal charges for immigration fraud. She's been permanently barred from re-entering the United States." Tom felt a sense of completion that had been missing despite Sarah's imprisonment and the success of his new career. Sarah was finally being removed from American soil, completing the destruction of the life she'd tried to build through deception and murder conspiracy. What happens to her in Canada? She'll face prosecution for false statements in her original immigration application, plus ongoing restitution obligations to American victims. Her criminal record will prevent her from obtaining employment in education or any field requiring background checks. Tom thought about Sarah adjusting to life in a country she'd left 15 years ago, with no career prospects, no financial resources, and no social connections. The complete destruction of her American life was finally permanent and irreversible. Any word on Mike Davidson's status? Still serving his 18-year sentence plus additional RICO charges that could extend his incarceration indefinitely. The federal investigation revealed organized criminal enterprise involving over 20 defense contractors throughout Texas and neighboring states. Tom's case had exposed a major criminal organization, protecting dozens of cleared personnel from murder conspiracies and financial exploitation. The scope of the criminal enterprise made Sarah's individual betrayal seem almost small by comparison. Jennifer Walsh completed her sentence but faces ongoing restitution obligations and permanent exclusion from professional licenses. She's working minimum wage jobs and will probably never recover financially from the criminal conviction. Tom hung up and called Lisa Rodriguez, who was in Washington coordinating federal cases involving domestic threats to government personnel. "Lisa, it's official. Sarah has been deported and permanently barred from the United States. How do you feel about that?" Tom considered her question while looking around his home office, which displayed certificates and commendations from various government agencies recognizing his expertise in domestic security consulting. "Satisfied," Tom replied. "Sarah chose to destroy her own life through criminal conspiracy, and now she's experiencing the full consequences of those choices. But more importantly, her case has helped protect other people from similar threats. Your expertise has prevented dozens of similar conspiracies and helped convict organized criminals targeting defense contractors. Sarah's betrayal inadvertently contributed to national security by exposing these threats." Tom appreciated the irony. Sarah's attempt to exploit his security clearance for personal gain had actually strengthened national security by exposing criminal organizations and developing countermeasures that protected other cleared personnel. That evening, Tom and Lisa celebrated Sarah's deportation with dinner at the restaurant where they'd had their first date. Their relationship had developed into partnership, built on shared commitment to protecting national security and mutual respect for professional expertise. To unintended consequences, Lisa toasted, raising her wine glass. To people who transform betrayal into public service, Tom replied, touching his glass to hers. 5 years after discovering the magnetic evidence that had exposed Sarah's murder conspiracy, Tom Garrett was living a life he couldn't have imagined during his marriage. His domestic security consulting business was thriving, his relationship with Lisa was deepening into permanent partnership, and his expertise was recognized throughout the government security community. Tom's house had been completely transformed into a showcase of modern security technology and professional success. The kitchen where he'd discovered Sarah's magnetic message was now equipped with secure communication systems that supported his classified consulting work. But Tom kept a small collection of colorful alphabet magnets on his refrigerator as a reminder of how criminal stupidity and analytical expertise had combined to transform his life in ways that no one could have predicted. The magnets currently spelled out "Justice Served" with small heart symbols flanking the message like punctuation marks. Tom thought it was an appropriate tribute to the magnetic evidence that had started his journey from betrayed husband to domestic security expert, and from victim of attempted murder to protector of national security. Sarah Garrett had tried to spell out her love affair using magnetic letters, but instead she'd accidentally spelled out her own destruction and Tom's transformation into someone whose expertise protected other people from similar threats. The magnetic evidence had revealed everything, and Tom Garrett had turned that revelation into a career built on protecting others from the kind of domestic terrorism he'd survived. It was the best possible outcome for everyone except the criminals who'd created the situation through their own greed and stupidity. And Tom Garrett, domestic security expert, had 8 years of successful consulting business to prove that expertise and systematic thinking could overcome any threat, even when that threat came from within his own marriage. The magnetic message had been crystal clear once Tom had learned how to read it properly. And Tom had been reading threats professionally ever since, helping other people protect themselves from the kind of domestic conspiracy that had tried to destroy his life, but had instead launched his career as someone who specialized in recognizing and neutralizing similar threats. Sarah's magnetic evidence had revealed far more than she'd ever intended, and Tom Garrett had built his future on that revelation. Justice served, indeed.